Relics of the Black Templars. Welcome, gentle listener, I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and war gear of the Warhammer 40K setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace. There is only time for war. And today, we shall be taking a brief look at some of the most important items in the reliquary of the Eternal Crusader of the Black Templars. But first, a wee snippet of a tale to get us in the mood. From the Bald Library, Worthy. Castellan Binric stood before the collected sword brethren. One of them was chosen. He knew it. One of them knew it too. A champion was amongst them right here, right now. Not that he could tell why he knew. He just knew. Pacing before them, he read from the litanies of the ancient breviary, the repository of the wisdom of the very first High Chaplain of the Black Templars. Their own chaplain was yet to be replaced. He had only passed days before, so the Castellan performed this duty for his men. Each of the sword brethren knelt on one knee, their sword held before them in both hands. They had been poised thus for the entire night. No food nor water had passed their lips. None had moved for over 6 hours. Theirs was the certainty of righteousness, the courage to face anything, anywhere, at any time. This was nothing but a moment of inner reflection, prayer, and purification. As he recited the litanies again, one of the brothers now looked up at him, and in his eyes Binric saw the light of holy wrath. It was Brother Hohenheim, and he was chosen. Binric closed the copy of the ancient breviary, and all now silently finished their last prayers, and also raised their heads. Binric now motioned for Hohenheim to stand and approach him. All looked on, but there were no snarls or lips curled back in jealousy. They were Black Templars. Such emotions were beneath them. Hohenheim slowly got to his feet and walked to the front to stand next to Binric. The others now stood and raised their swords in the air in salute. Although there was no outward mark, no aura, no lights, no fanfare, they could all feel it. They all knew it. Hohenheim felt he had been called, and Binric had, simply by motioning him to approach, ratified this assertion. They all bowed and walked from the chapel, now ready to take up their positions. It would not be long. The champion would need to be girt for war. Then they would be about it. Binric waited until they had all left, then nodded to Hohenheim, and they both walked to the most holy of holies. They walked to the chapter reliquary, and there Hohenheim basked in the glory he witnessed. Banners that had been flown over the walls of enemy fortifications, taken with blood and fire. Flags that had been carried to war thousands of years ago. The weapons he witnessed were ancient beyond belief, many hailing from the days of the first and greatest crusade, that which they, the Black Templars, continued even to this day. Then, finally, Binric stood before a holy altar, where the black sword was already prepared. Binric now looked to Hohenheim and began. Brother Hohenheim, you are called. You will wield this holy blade in the name of the Emperor. You are his champion. But before you reach for this weapon of righteous zeal, whose edge will carve through the unrighteous, you must know. It is ever the dream of the Templar to be chosen, to wield the weapons of their forebears, the icons of our very faith. Yet, even when one is chosen, one can still fail, if their faith is not enough. In their arrogance, the unworthy will believe that they are the master of the weapon, that it will hand them victory over all, that they are the prime mover, and that the blade is just a sign of their virtue. But the true warrior, The blade of the Emperor, his chosen, will know that he is just a conduit to the power of the Emperor. The true warrior will know that he does not wield the blade nor the power. It wields him. Hundreds before have closed their gauntlet over the sword's grip. Hundreds have carried it to battle, and all that have succeeded have known the one truth. The sword is not worthy of them and their calling, because they have been chosen. It is the sword brother who has, for a short time only, been deemed worthy of carrying this blade to where it needs to be, to strike down that which the Emperor has judged anathema to his will. You must cleanse yourself of pride and purpose, and become a vessel for his might and wrath alone. Hohenheim nodded with purpose. He was ready. Binrick could see it in his eyes as he reached forward and closed his hand on the grip of the black sword. He raised it high, then brought it down to the guard position, so Binrick could anoint him further. Today, a champion of the Emperor would take the black sword to the surface of this world. There was a greater demon to be dealt with, summoned by witches and heretics. And on this day, the black sword would be drenched in the blood of the unclean. Now many will want to sneer at the superstition and religious zeal of the Black Templars, but make no mistake, this is a silly position to be in. For the Black Templars know one thing above all else: there are spiritual beings in the universe, and in that they are utterly correct. Now one might argue that it is imbecilic to go against the imperial truth, to believe in the divinity of the Emperor. Yet, is that true anymore? For he is indeed becoming a god in the warp, so despite that they may have been incorrect all of the previous millennia, they are now being proven right. And in a world where there are dark gods and other malign forces, where there is proof of the soul, then to be an atheist is patently and demonstrably ridiculous. The import of the relics of any chapter are almost unfathomable to those outside of the monastic orders of the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines. For the Marines are unable to have family, unable to have any connection outside of their order, unable to look to a life of achievements that will change the world for the better. The best that any Space Marine can hope for is to be the hand that strikes down evils that would make matters worse. No more, no less. It is in the drives of the Space Marines that one can understand their reverence with which they hold these ancient artifacts of the chapter, any chapter. Yet, where others are non-believers and make pomp and circumstance of their weaponry another panoply of war due to tradition, due to wanting to breathe more identity and thus unity into their fighting men. But for the Black Templars, each of these items is as sacrosanct as any icon found in the depths of the most ardent religious vaults in history. Each is not only a tie to the past, to the glories and deeds performed by their predecessors, but also a very real tether to their god, the Emperor. In this way, the zeal that they generate amongst the Crusader squads is a thing of terror to the unclean, the heretic, traitor, and witch. For belief gives power in the Warhammer universe, and the Black Templars are the most ardent and strong in belief in all of the chapters of Space Marines. So in a very real way, their artifacts are imbued with a power that other fraternities of Marines can only dream of having. Now, let us have a whirlwind tour of the icons most known amongst the Templars of Sigismund, the first Emperor's champion. Chapter Relics. The Ancient Breviary, as we have already heard, is a book written by the first chaplain of the Black Templars. Contained within are words that are as relevant and empowering today in the age Indomitus as ever they were when they were written. The Armour of Faith. It is a set of ludicrously intricate and efficient artificer armour that is proof from near any enemy blade or bolt. The armour of the remorseless Crusader. A set of armour gifted to the Death Watch, sister to the armour of the Pitiless Crusader and the armour of the Fearless Crusader, which still remain in the hands of the Templars. Each of the three is a set of artificer armour, only a tad less potent than the armour of faith. The wearer of any of these armours is a juggernaut that few can stay, let alone entirely stop. The Aurelian Shroud. Taken from a shrine world after the opening of the Great Rift, it can be draped over a being or object to give them holy protection. Its light shines out and hurls back the power of evil wherever it touches. The Black Sword of Sigismund. The weapon of the Founder, the First Templar. It is kept upon the most secure holding of the Eternal Crusader, the Gloriana-class battleship that is the central home of the Black Templars. The Black Sword. As shown in this story and others, it is another black sword of incredible power that is taken by a champion of the Emperor. It is used by that warrior until the deed he was blessed to perform has indeed been done. Then it is returned to its home in the Eternal Crusader once more. The Crusader's Helm. An ancient helmet with the jawbone of Saint Sebatus inlaid inside it, which lets the wearer's voice rise above all else, even in the middle of battle. Thus an orator can inflame the passions of their brothers while wearing it, bringing them to even greater heights of passion and zeal. The Skull of the Cacodominus. A Xeno skull taken in the horror known as the Howling. It screams to this day, despite being only a skull on a stick. Yet the cries of this icon can disrupt the minds and thus the powers of any witch in its vicinity. As the Black Templars have no librarians of their own, this can even the odds dramatically when facing unclean witches. The Sword of Dawn. The very blade once used by Rogel Dawn himself, the Primarch of the 7th Legion, and primogenitor of the Black Templars. Rogel broke the blade when he failed to protect the Emperor from the arch-traitor, Horus. Yet Sigismund took the pieces. One fragment, the larger one, he had reforged into the Sword of the High Marshals, the blade of the leaders of the chapter. The other remains he had enshrined in the reliquary of the Eternal Crusader, a holy reminder of the days of fire and blood. The Sword of Judgment, a master-crafted blade with an Aquila as a crossguard. Wielded by many, it has never fallen into the hands of the enemy. Witchbane, a blade of Brother Sergeant Navrel, a legend who hacked his way through an entire Eldar force to then slaughter their Farseer leader. Witchbane is a chainsword that is most often given to Black Templars on their tour while inducted into the Death Watch. Witchseeker bolts, taken from the blades of fallen battle brothers, melted down and created into rounds that are blessed, and from there they become anathema to witches. The bolts have a preternatural accuracy and tend to hit the very heart of any witch who is shot by them. As the great rift yawns wide, the psychic awakening has changed the very nature of the universe in both blatant and subtle ways. And now, faith has far more potence than it ever did before. So one can only imagine that the relics of the Templars will only be even more powerful than ever before. So one can only imagine that the relics of the Templars will be augmented mightily. It almost makes you feel sorry for the heretic, the traitor, and the witch. Almost. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.